Welcome to Arkansas First Reports. I'm your host, Kandi Cox, and today we're diving into a critical topic that affects every American who relies on the strength, safety, and integrity of our nation's supply chain, the state of the American trucking industry. Joining me is a powerhouse voice on this issue, Shannon Everett. He's the co-founder of American Truckers United. This organization has become a bold voice in the fight to protect the rights of American truckers and bring accountability back to an industry under siege. According to their mission, the industry is at a crossroads, plagued by influx and untrained, unvetted drivers, largely due to open borders and weak enforcement, resulting in a surge of fatal crashes and suppressed wages. Shannon has been on the front lines advocating for common sense reforms, greater transparency in brokerage practices, and the enforcement of safety standards that put American lives first. Today, we'll talk about the biggest threats facing our truckers, from overreaching federal regulations to foreign labor displacement, and the real-life consequences of allowing illegal and unqualified drivers behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound machine on our highways. We're also going to break down the differences between the House bill that Shannon advocated for, House Bill 1569, which was the Secure Roads and Safe Trucking Act of 2025, and House Bill 1745, which passed. We'll also touch on President Trump's executive order requiring English proficiency for commercial drivers, which is already making waves across the industry, and what more needs to be done. This episode is all about truth, transparency, and taking back control of American roads. Buckle up, it's going to be a powerful ride. Shannon, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Kandi.
Thank you for being with us today. You know, this bill actually started, you and I were talking about, as a resolution that you brought to the the Saline County Republican women, and you presented that, and you presented why it was important, because you have years and years in the trucking industry, and it passed unanimously, overwhelmingly, by the women of that club. So talk to me about this.
Yeah, so, I think that's one of the most interesting things about this has been my experience in being involved politically.
Yeah.
I never was a very political person. I mean, I've always followed politics, but I've never run for office. I've never campaigned for anybody or helped anybody run a campaign. And so there's a whole different side of this that you don't see until you engage and get involved in all of that.
Right.
And so I was very active in men's ministry, and one of those men was Randy Sams, who's a member of our Saline County Republican Committee. He's also my next door neighbor.
Yes.
Another member of the Republican Committee had reached out to me, and that's Carol, and she's also a neighbor of mine.
Right.
And they both kind of approached me and knew I was passionate about some issues in government, and said, "Hey, you need to come check out the committee meetings." And I said, I attended those a couple years ago, but I haven't been very involved. And they're like, no, it's different now. You need to come check it out. People are like really taking action and getting involved in things that matter. It's not just like a procedural meeting. And so I said, okay, I'll come check it out. And so my very first meeting, Jennifer Lancaster was speaking, and she was talking about it being a spiritual battle.
Yes.
And she was quoting scripture. She was quoting Ephesians 6:10, talking about the armor of God, and that we're to approach everything spiritually. What she didn't know, and I didn't know Jennifer at the time. I'd never met her before in my life. But she didn't know at that time I had a coin in my pocket that when I get a chance to pray with someone, I hand out those coins. And on those coins, it's Ephesians 6:10. It's the armor, and it tells you that lots of spiritual battle. And you start every day, in fellowship with the Lord, so you can approach it from a spiritual perspective.
Right.
And so it's funny, I was reminding Jennifer yesterday, I was like, I know you didn't know, you probably thought it was weird, but when she got through speaking, she walked by me in the crowd, and I handed her that coin.
Yeah.
And it was confirmation for me. I always say, like, God winks at us. And so he confirms his plan for us and like where he wants us to be and what he wants us to do. And so Jennifer saying that in that meeting and me having that in the pocket and us having that exchange was a confirmation for me. It was a God wink for me. It's like, you're supposed to be here.
Right.
And so I took that very seriously. And so I did. I engaged and got very involved and attended all the meetings. And Randy and Carol was right. It was different. You know, we had a lot of people. The community was very engaged and people were showing up and speaking up.
Well, it was the largest committee in the state. It had grown by leaps and bounds by grassroots people who were ready to make changes.
And it was almost unanimously all people that were in support of the Make America Great Again movement,
Yes.
in support of our president, who has now been elected. And so it was really just refreshing and exciting and to kind of see all of that. And what everybody didn't know is, and which we don't know about everyone in the room, right? We're all walking through different things in life.
That's right.
You know, and so like God used Jennifer to speak to me. God used you to speak to me because I saw courage in you. I saw courage in Jennifer, and I saw courage in Randy, and I saw courage in Carol. It's like, where's that coming from? And I saw very quickly, like, hey, you know, this is bigger than politics.
Yes.
There's a spiritual thing going on here.
Right.
And
because that courage comes from Christ.
It's the only place it comes from.
That's right.
Like, I didn't do anything. God did everything.
That's right.
You know, and so that's I think that's one of the great messages too, is like, just draw near to him, have fellowship with him. Like, it's okay for you to have a plan, but his plan's way better.
Right.
And so just be okay with his plan.
Right.
Walk every day and accept, because I'm going to tell you, as we get through this story, everything that he did was way better than anything I did.
Yeah. Because he knows the ending before we know the beginning, right? Yeah.
And so it's like, it's so amazing. But, and so anyway, so I see all this activity going on and then there's the crash of, and so I'm starting with the committee here, but there's a backstory
right
about the trucking, issue. But, so I'm gonna keep going on this, and we'll probably go back in history a little bit later.
Yeah.
But so I'm seeing all this activity going on, and I've got a backstory, and my backstory's in trucking, and my backstory's in illegal immigration, and how it's affecting the trucking industry, and how it's affecting highway safety, and so I'm seeing all this stuff, and I've been going through a period in my life where I was just drawn really close to the Lord. Like I call it cave time, and cave time is the story of King David, when he was running from Saul, and he was in the cave of Adullam, and he spent all that time in fear, and he was hiding out. And but that everybody gets cave time.
Yeah.
It looks different for everybody, you know, but it's so good. At the time, you don't know it's good.
Right. Right.
But when you look back, it's just like, man, I really needed that, you know, because so much we think it's all us, and we think it's our plans, and what we don't realize is God has a plan for us, and I learned that in my cave time. And so I was going through cave time when I come to this committee. I'd just come out of the cave really, and was starting to kind of revitalize, I guess, and walk with the Lord in a strong, powerful way. And so when I saw everybody's spirit, and I saw what was going on, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then Scott Miller died, and the Scott Miller crash. This starts getting into how all this got going, but Scott Miller was a man in Colorado, and this was national news. And he was hit by a truck driver that was an illegal immigrant that had already been deported from the country 16 times, did not have a U.S. commercial driver's license. And because of my industry experience, I knew how he got here.
Right.
I knew how he got back every time.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on in my life at the time. I've got so much to this, but I really felt the Lord tell me, okay, it's time.
Yeah.
You know, it's time. And this is it. And so I feel like I was called into this by the Lord very clearly, very clearly. And So I reached out to the family, and of course, I didn't get an answer from them. It was hard to track them down. And at the time, I wasn't even on social media. I hadn't had social media in, I don't know, 15 years or more. No Facebook, no Twitter, none of that stuff.
Right.
I was really anti-social media. And I still am, unless you got to get a message out,
Right.
And, but couldn't reach the family. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to start investigating crashes. And so I started looking into crashes, and I found the crash of Mark Bryant very quickly. What I did is I went to the Arkansas Highway Police's website where they list fatal crashes, and that's motorcycle crash. And by the way, I advise you, if you ride a motorcycle, don't go to that website and look, because almost every fatal crash in Arkansas, it's ridiculous. You'll see a truck crash, car crash, motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly.
It really woke me up. It's like, man, I'm not letting anybody, but I'm going.
Yeah, my boys keep wanting a motorcycle, and I'm like, Mom is just not in favor of motorcycles. And this comes from someone who used to ride motorcycles. So,
and so I was scrolling through this data, and then I see this crash, and it's a guy named Mark Bryant. It's in Lawrence County, and I see the truck and everything involved. And I was like, I'm gonna check that out. So I called the state police, and they said it's under investigation. We can't give you a copy of the report. And so if you don't know, anybody can go access a crash report from the Arkansas State Police for $10. You just have to have the day of the crash and the name of the victim and some other information, and you can go see what's going on with these truck crashes. And I encourage y'all to do that. We need to hold these people accountable.
That's right.
And so I couldn't get the report, so I started trying to reach out to his family to see if they could give me information on how he died. And that's when I met LaDanya. And so I did some research on Facebook and other places, and I found LaDanya, which was the ex-wife of Mark Bryant. And I reached out to her, and she told me the story, and it was exactly what I thought it was. The guy was from Honduras. He had come into the country illegally. He was working for a company out of Oklahoma. He was hauling out of some mine. I don't know if it's sand or gravel or something like that up in Lawrence County. And he was coming up on a curve. It was a sharp curve. And he probably couldn't read the signs.
Right.
Because we know he didn't speak English.
Right.
He misses the curve, goes over in the other lane, and kills Mark Bryant. And Mark Bryant has, 3 kids, and had worked for the Arkansas State University for a long time. And the family was just devastated. And when I met up with LaDanya, she was really relieved, because they'd all been kind of like saying, how does this happen? How in the world is there an illegal alien driving a commercial truck?
Sure.
And so they didn't have a lot of answers. And she's like, I need you to call my attorney. So I called the attorney, met with him. His name's Brandon, talked to him for a little bit and explained who I was. And at the time, there was no American Truckers United or AFT or any stuff. And so I just said, hey, I'm an industry expert. I've got a lot of experience in immigration and trucking and all this stuff. And I've been quiet for about 4 years now, and I feel like I'm supposed to help y'all. And so what can I do to help you? And so we started exchanging information. I went and looked up information for him on the trucking company and all this stuff. And so anyway, I called a friend of mine, Harvey Beach, and I know he's been on your show.
Yes. He was on one of our podcasts just about a month or so ago. So yeah.
And Harvey had been experiencing what I had experienced in my backstory, which was the economic damage side of this, in that his business was struggling because our industry's been flooded with too much supply of labor.
Right.
We call it labor dumping now, where we've got an excess amount of truck drivers that are coming from foreign countries. And he and I had been talking behind the scenes about that issue. And I said, look, I really feel like the Lord's called me to do this. It's not just the economic damages to me and you now. Scott's killed. Mark's been killed. There's families over here praying and crying out. It's like, we can help them.
Right.
And I think we're supposed to do that. And he said, I'll do it with you.
Yeah, just for our viewers, if you want to go back and listen to that podcast, the name of that podcast was America Truckers Under Fire, The Fight for Safe Roads and Fair Policies. It's such a great interview with Harvey Beach. So I encourage you to go back into our podcast and look for that. Or you can also find it on Arkansas First, 1st.com.
And so he agrees to do it with me. And so it's like, how do we do this? We don't have a clue.
Right.
So we set up we do it all the right way, though. We contact the attorneys, have it all set up and structured, and off we go. And And we didn't have any intent of filing bills in legislation per se. What we wanted to do was to make the public aware
Right.
and to advocate for drivers and for the crash victims with the public, but we didn't know anything about writing bills. And I had seen through the Saline County Republican Committee everybody doing this resolution
Right.
process.
Right.
Of course, I wasn't aware of that, and you know, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, those are pointless." You know, it's not necessary. I'm here to tell you today that it was a necessary part of this journey.
Yeah.
And
It starts getting people informed because you presented that in the Saline County Republican
yeah,
Women, and then you went to the Saline County Republican Committee, and it also passed unanimously there. And then you started going to other committees and talking to them and
yeah.
presenting resolutions within their committees. And so what it does is it gets people informed.
And so I had been told several times, like, this is a federal thing. This is a federal thing. You got to go beg your federal legislators to do something. I've
Mhm.
done that.
Right.
I have sat down with every single one of our federal well, except Womack. I did not sit down with Womack, and I talked to French Hill by phone. But I've sat down with the other legislators and federal legislators, and couldn't get any help.
Right.
They agreed that it was an issue, but they all said to me, "Hey, you're the only one saying something about this, and we can't go up against the Arkansas Trucking Association. You're going to have to get the Arkansas Trucking Association to do something." And so that goes back to the backstory
Yeah.
we might get into later.
Yeah.
But I'd already tried to do that, and so I think this story is so cool because it shows that the grassroots is really where it's at,
That's right. It is.
and you don't have to go beg people
Right.
to help you. You
Which
just
is why it's so important, what we talk about all the time with Arkansas First is how important it is to be engaged
yeah.
and to pay attention to exactly what's going on, because it is our voices that make the difference.
Well, and this is a great example of that. And so it's like, okay, we want to get the message out. Let's get up and start speaking at the committee meetings where people are politically engaged and they seem to care and want to help.
That's right.
Because that's the best place to go. Like, these people
Yes.
are they want to help. And so I asked to speak at the Republican committee meeting, and then I asked to speak at the Republican women's, and the women's come on the schedule first. We went to the women's meeting. I introduced the resolution, and I think one of the most interesting things is it was exactly what we thought it was. I think it's pretty easy to say there might have been one other person who was in trucking that was aware of the issue,
Right.
but it was almost unanimous that the room didn't know that was taking place.
Oh, I was floored at the information that you brought in, and that's having with some little knowledge. I think you and I had a conversation that I have family in trucking. I have a cousin who's owned a trucking business, and so having little knowledge of the trucking industry, I was absolutely floored by the information that you brought.
And so in that resolution, at the time, you know, we were focused on these guys don't have U.S. licenses. They didn't have United States commercial driver's license. So it's how is that possible?
Right.
And so that's because of in my backstory, my experience, I was familiar with all these guys coming up from Mexico with all these fraudulent licenses, and our officers just letting them go and not being properly credentialed, not being able to speak English. And it's just like, you know, so I shared all that with everybody. These guys can't speak English. These guys can't, they don't have a license. They don't have MVRs. Nobody knows what their driving history is like. Nobody knows their background. They could be criminals.
Right.
Most likely are. And so everybody's just outraged. And so it passes unanimously.
Yes.
And then we go to the county committee meeting. Same thing. Everybody's outraged. It passes unanimously. And all that's recorded too. We have all
Yes.
those recordings back
Yeah.
from those days. And so then I ask, okay, Pulaski County, can I come speak? Hey, Faulkner County, can I come speak? And of course, so then I go speak at Pulaski, and I go speak at Faulkner County. And so that is the grassroots, right?
That's right.
And so we're talking about these issues, and then I get a phone call, and it's from the Arkansas Trucking Association. And the phone call was, hey, can you come by and meet with us? We want to talk about this soapbox you're on.
Yes.
And so I knew from my backstory that this was taking the wrong turn just by the tone of the conversation.
Right.
And that's because I'd gone to the Trucking Association back in 2019 when I'd laid off 450 American truck drivers.
That was
And
hard.
it was really hard.
Yeah.
And that's when I went to all those federal legislators. I went to all of our congressmen and representatives and said, hey, I need help with this. And I was the only one. I know I was the only one saying something at the time. And hey, you got to get the association on board. You got to get the association on board. And so I went to the association for help. They were outraged that I was going around them to the congressman, but I'd already mentioned it to them. They didn't want to help me, had told me they were going to help me. And so I had to go around them. So then now they're mad because I'm going around them. But, by the way, if you're in trucking, you've got to go through the approved channels.
Right.
Or you're not being a good citizen.
Right.
And so I wasn't happy with the response I was getting. So I went around them and I get, they call, so we're back in 2019 right now. They call me into the office. I go up to the office and I've got this whole presentation of all the material about what's going on. I show it to them and they're like, I've been getting a lot of phone calls about you sharing this information. And we think you should really put this down. This is not something that we're willing to discuss.
And you're getting the bad boy talk, right?
Yeah, and you're going to knock down a wasp nest and not have any wasp spray. I was given that message by the president of the Arkansas Trucking Association, and I was shocked. I was like, I don't even know how to take this right now.
Right.
And so I left there convinced that I'm not going to stop. And look, in 2019, I wasn't in fellowship with the Lord where I was supposed to be. And so I would just say to everybody, like, I feel like that wasn't, it was more that I wasn't ready and it wasn't time than it was anything. And so all of these things is just the way God kind of orchestrated this story. And
there is a season for everything.
There's a season for everything. And sometimes that season's to wait. And so I waited, I had to wait from 2019, 2020 until 2024 till we started on this.
Right.
There was that cave time that I'm talking about, there was a long waiting period. And, but after I had that meeting with them and I talked to some people, I continued to work on it and I continued to push through, and I won't go it takes too long to tell all the details of that, but and I was, this is the first time I'm telling on anything, but I received a death threat, about it. And I know you knew that. I'd shared that with you before, I believe. And, this is not anything I've shared with anybody. And up until, I didn't tell anybody about that really until, 2023, I believe, but that happened in 2020. And that's what started my cave time, because I was like, whoa, what is this? At first I'm warned, and then now this. And so, it really was a massive issue.
Right.
It was a huge, huge issue. And
this is when you know that you're doing what the Lord is calling you to do, when the pressure comes on from the world, right?
Yeah.
But He is so much greater than the world. And so that's where we have to draw our strength and our confidence is from the Lord when we're going through these things and fighting these battles that truly do matter.
Yeah. And so that's, again, I wasn't in fellowship with the Lord at the time, and I went into cave time, and today I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
And that's because, you don't know what you need until there's no one else to call to explain it or to understand it. And so I was pushed to the Lord, and I am so grateful because I'm a completely different man today.
Yeah. Amen.
Because of what I went through. And God used all of that for what He did, for Deanne Miller, and what He's doing for LaDonya Bryant right now, and what He's doing for American truck drivers right now. And what He's done for my life. And so so I put it down for all that time. And so I'm back, and now we get to fast forward back to that phone call.
Right.
So now they're calling me again. Right. This is 5 years later.
Right.
And they're calling me and they're saying, hey, we want to talk to you about this soapbox. And I said, well, I'm going to pray about, meeting with you, because I've already given y'all all the information. I'm giving it to all the citizens now. I'm sharing it with all the people. But you already have all this information. And so I really don't know what there is.
And it's really at their fingertips.
Yeah. It's like, who am I?
Right.
y'all are the association. Why do you need information from me?
Right.
You should already have this information. You should already be advocating for these issues.
That's right.
I don't need to come educate you. You know exactly what's going on. And so anyway, so I shared, like, I'm going to pray about it. And I did sincerely pray about it. And I said, I think I should be able to present this information to the board. Last time, 5 years ago, I didn't get to present it to the board. I was stopped from presenting it to the board. And so I was like, I will come meet, but I'd like to present to the board, not just one individual.
Right.
No, you can't do that, and that's not how it works. I have to vent everything, and then you get to show it to the board. And I said, well, the only thing that's changed since the last time I showed you all this information was the number of people that have died and the number of people that have lost their jobs. And so tell them that. Yeah. And then I've not talked to them since.
Yeah.
That was in June of 2024. And so I left there, and on the phone call, they had said that there was that they were working on a bill. And the purpose of the meeting was to hear my side of the story, but also to show me this bill. And so I left there, not knowing didn't go talk to them, didn't go meet with them, and not knowing what the bill said, and still attending these committee meetings, and still praying every day, and just like really waiting on the Lord. And I attended a Faulkner County Immigration Committee meeting. And I was given a speech on this because I had attended a Conway meeting, a regular Faulkner County committee meeting, and was invited to this immigration meeting. And I presented this immigration meeting, and that's where I meet Representative Wayne Long.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that God showed me and taught me through all of this is that his plans are greater than our plans. And so if we'll go through the doors that he opens,
right,
then, we're walking in step with him. And so I'm always looking for what door he's going to open for me.
That's
and
right.
That's kind of and that's what me and Harvey have kind of agreed to do through all this is, hey, let's look for the open doors and let's walk through those and let God open them for us. And let's not beat on anybody's door and ask them to help us.
That's right.
Let's just speak about it, talk about it, get the message out, and then go through the doors that he opens. And we've been doing that. And, so Faulkner County, everybody oohs and ahs and gasp in the crowd like they'd been doing. There's probably 100, 200 people there that night. And the representatives come up to me, and said, hey, I want to help you. I love Mary Bentley. She's one of our great representatives. She comes up and says hello and says she wants to help me on the issue. Representative Long comes up and says he wants to help on the issue. And then, about 2 weeks later, I think it was, I'm passing a step here. So I had that meeting, and then I don't know if the Saline meeting come before that meeting or after, but there's another meeting in here before I get the phone call. But I'm at a Saline County Republican meeting after that or before that, and R.J. Hawk approaches me. Mm-hmm. And he says, hey, I heard you're working on some trucking stuff. I've got this bill. Well, as soon as he said that to me, I knew R.J. Hawk didn't write no bill.
Right.
What does he know about trucking?
Right.
And so it's like, okay, I know where this bill's coming from. I didn't tell him that, but I knew where the bill's coming from. And I said, okay, send it to me. I'll take a look at it. And a week goes by or whatever. I didn't get it. And then I finally get it. And so I received the bill and I open it up, and my goodness, it's exactly the opposite of what I'd been getting up and talking about. And so the bill was written on its face. They say that they're dealing with fake, fraudulent CDLs, mm-hmm. which I'm absolutely against fake, fraudulent CDLs.
Right.
But do we need to be trying to Band-Aid the fake, fraudulent CDLs? Or do we just need to push back
right.
the system that's allowing a group of people to use a bunch of fake and fraudulent CDLs?
Right.
Like, why don't we have a bunch of fake and fraudulent U.S. CDLs?
Right.
No, they were talking about fake and fraudulent Mexican CDLs. And so, but when you went down, so they did a little language about that, and then about some kind of vote, some silly registration to vote stuff or something. I'm not really understanding what the language was about the documents and fake documents and all this other, but what really got my attention was when you went down to reciprocity.
Yeah.
In the reciprocity section, Arkansas state law has always said, or for the longest time has said, that to drive a commercial motor vehicle, you have to have a United States commercial driver's license or a Canadian driver's license. And they wanted to strike that language, regardless of why they wanted to do it.
Right.
They're going to tell you 10 different reasons of why they wanted to do it.
Right.
You're still changing state law. You're still changing a code of state law on reciprocity.
Yes.
And in that code, you're taking it from U.S. and Canada to something completely different. Here's what they wanted to do. They wanted to strike the words United States and Canada, and they wanted to add the words non-domiciled learner's permit and non-domiciled CDL from any foreign jurisdiction. And so the new recipe, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the bill in front of me, but the new wording would say that to operate a commercial motor vehicle in the state of Arkansas, you can have a non-domiciled commercial learner's permit.
Right. Learner's permit.
Learner's permit.
Yes.
Or commercial driver's license from any foreign jurisdiction. I was outraged.
Yeah.
It's like, have you? And he had never heard. I don't know that he'd ever heard me speak about the issue. But I'm sure he had to have known that I was speaking about the issue.
Of course he did. Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I was like, did he even read this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how in the world would anybody read that and send it to a guy who's getting up and talking about how unsafe our roads are because we've allowed all these untrained, unqualified, unvetted people on our highways that can't even read or speak English, and say, hey, do you support this?
Right.
It's going the other way.
Right. Right.
And I don't know, I was just like, what? And so I sent it to him, and then we had this back and forth, and it just like spirals out of control. And so I could tell that wasn't getting anywhere. So I just said, look, I'm not in support. I'll be in opposition to this. And so, we haven't really talked since that. He and I directly met one time at a restaurant and exchanged pleasantries, but I can just, again, the door was shut.
Right.
The door was slammed. That's not an open door.
No, it's not.
That's not an open door. And so I could tell where that was coming from. So it's just like, okay, shut that door, move on. And then one night I get a phone call. They wanted
you to be okay with it, to shut you up.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
And so I get a phone call from Representative Long then.
Yes.
And it was probably, a couple weeks after that. And I'm not real sure of the timing. But he's like, hey, I'm working on all this immigration stuff, and I really liked what you said in Faulkner County, and I want to help you. And he said, I'll write a bill for you. And I was like, man, I was just so pumped. That's like one of those, that's an open door.
Right.
That's an open door,
right.
know. So I was just so pumped, and I said, man, that would be great. And so, he wrote House Bill 1569, which is the Secure and Safe Roads Act, which addressed English proficiency. That was one of the very first things. Hey, a guy must be able to read or speak English. If he can't read or speak English, we're going to not only fine him, we're going to impound his truck.
Yes.
And so we're going to make the roads safer by taking the driver that can't read our signs off of the highway. And then it addressed the foreign driver's licenses,
mm-hmm.
which it specifically went on to say, our first draft was like, hey, we don't believe we should be accepting any drivers from Mexico and Canada. And we received pushback on that because there's a trade agreement, the USMCA, that allows drivers from Mexico and Canada. And so we amended that after to say, with the proper documentation, really. And really more to push back on the B-1 visas. Really how these illegal drivers are getting in here is an abuse of a visitor visa. They're in here working, and they're all here on visitor visas. They're not on work visas.
Right.
They're not supposed to be working.
Right.
So the bill addressed that. And then the bill addressed...
I mean, when you really dig into this, it just makes you mad.
Yeah.
As a citizen, as a mom on the roadway with your kids in the car with you, to understand that these truckers that are here, that they can't read the road signs. They can't speak English. And our government is going, "That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay." I mean,
Really,
you look, one of the things I kept telling
I
people
don't
was
really believe our government's been doing that, though.
Mm.
I really believe there's been a group of people that have been kind of exploiting loopholes and letting this go on for
Right,
profit.
right,
And
exactly.
what I've found is that most of the government didn't know
Right,
and are still being misled. And we'll get
yes.
into that here in a minute.
You just look out here. I would tell people just out here on the 30, right here coming through Saline County
Yeah.
with the construction and how narrow and it goes from wide lane to narrow like really quick. And these truckers, if they can't read our signs, we were having accidents all the time out here involving trucks.
Yeah. And so the third thing that it addressed was the non-domiciled CDL. And so look, I've been doing this for 25 years. I didn't know what a non-domiciled CDL is. It wasn't until Representative R.J. Hawk handed me that bill, 1745,
Right,
that had the language non-domiciled CDL in it,
right.
that I learned what a non-domiciled learner's permit, a non-domiciled. So I've employed thousands of truck drivers, thousands. I've looked at, I've got people that do the recruiting stuff, but I've seen several applications. I've seen several licenses. My recruiters and stuff say that they've never seen a non-domiciled learner's permit or a non-domiciled CDL. And so when me and Harvey started looking into this, what in the world is it? What are they trying to do here?
Right.
And so we find out, and that is a license for a non-citizen.
Yes.
That several states, we didn't know it at the time. We know it now. 20 at least have passed state law, which is what Arkansas is trying to do, allowing for states to issue what is a non-domiciled CDL, which is, hey, you can issue a CDL driver's license to a non-citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has never been the case. In fact, none of these states were doing it up until like 2021 is when we really found that it took off.
Right.
And so what started out as foreign driver's licenses and English proficiency has now dwarfed into, oh my goodness, they're giving them U.S. CDLs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they're calling them these non-domiciles. And so then it takes this whole other level. And so we get all that in our bill and we get our bill, that's like, December or so when we're kind of working on all that stuff. And then we get it filed, and so HB 1569 files, and we're like, man, this is going to be good. And, we have a meeting with the chair of transportation committee, and we have a meeting with state police. We have a meeting with the chief of the highway police. We have a meeting with some lobbyists. We call them all in a room and we show them, hey, this is, we want to educate y'all and show you what we're talking about, what's going on here. And we give them this whole rundown. You can tell, again, it's more shock.
Right.
It's
right.
like, what? And so, there's a comment in the room that's, we got to get this addressed, boys. We need to work this out. And so that was a great day. It's a great meeting. It's like, man, this is all headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then here comes Arkansas Trucking Association.
Yes.
And look, you won't see them publicly speaking about any of this. It's all behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And on phone calls. And so, we leave that meeting and then like the next day, it's like, well, our representative, this is a federal thing. The word starts going around, federal. And what I've learned is that, through states' rights and because of federal code, there's a federal code that allows the state to enact more stringent regulations on commercial motor vehicles.
Right.
Than the federal statute. We can't go less than.
Right.
Okay. Well, making our roads more safe is a higher standard, not a lesser standard.
Right.
I would say the lesser standard is allowing in a bunch of fake CDLs and a bunch of unvetted non-domiciled CDLs. And so here we are, 1569's filed. We've talked about all these English proficiencies already filed
Right.
in the state. And Oh no, we can't do that. We can't do English proficiency. We can't do non-domicile CDLs. We can't touch B1s. None of that. No, we can't do any of that. It's a federal issue. You can't do it at state level. Okay. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we take this to the committee and let our representatives decide what we can do,
Right.
and let our senators decide what we can do, not these state agencies and the trucking association.
Right.
And so, we're trying to get our bill heard by committee, and we're not getting anywhere, and it's never getting on the agenda. And then that bill that RJ had presented back the year before,
Mm-hmm.
I left out an important detail on that. It had on it that it was to be filed in special session. So they were preparing that bill in 2024 to run it in the special session that never run. I believe there was a special session that was going to run in Q3 or Q4 that never ended up getting called. And so that bill had been idled because of that.
Right.
And so here it comes.
Yeah.
They file HB 1745. And when they filed it, I'm like, I honestly thought we were making enough noise. And at the time, we really didn't have a lot of media coverage yet. When we filed 1569, that's when the media coverage started.
Right.
Prior to that, there wasn't hardly any media talking about the issue. And the first news organizations to pick it up were all industry news.
Right.
It really started getting really popular with industry news. And so Arkansas still wasn't seeing that. But if you're in the industry, word was all over the country. Hey, there's a bill in Arkansas about English proficiency. Well, that was 1569.
Right. And I even text you because I was on TikTok and trackers all over because the algorithm on TikTok. If you watch something through, you see it. You constantly get that in front of you. And I text you, I'm like, this is all over TikTok. Your bill is all over TikTok. And the American drivers, the American truckers were in huge support.
Oh, it was unanimous.
Yes.
By far.
Yes.
I mean, if you can count on one hand the guys who were against it at that time.
Yeah.
And so so it was really very popular at a national level on social media. Like, wow, look what Arkansas is doing, and truckers are all pumped. And even our social media, I told you earlier, like I didn't do social media, but we had to create social media for this association. And so we did, and that's when our social media really started blowing up. And so that was neat to experience. And it's like really gone crazy since then. But so the social media is starting to buzz now, and we've got this bill filed, and everybody's getting excited. I mean, there's drivers just putting out random TikToks that drivers already being arrested, and that was all just rumor and buzz, but it was way beyond us.
Yeah.
Anything that we could control. And so we felt really good about the momentum. It's like, wow, this momentum's really going to carry this thing through. And so then 1745 comes in, and it no more than gets filed, it immediately gets to committee. And so before we can have a committee hearing, 1745 gets filed, and they get their committee hearing. And so I have to call in all of our families that have been impacted in the crashes. I have to call in these other trucking companies, and also called in some towing companies. Hey, we all come testify about the crashes that y'all are cleaning up. And so we all testify not for our bill. We're just trying to defend the fact that they're trying to stop our bill,
right,
by producing this kind of a ghost bill that acts like it's doing something, but it doesn't. And so we go in and we testify against it. And here's the main thing. Here's the reason we're against 1745. We weren't against 1745 because we want people to use fraudulent CDLs.
Right.
We were against 1745 because there's nothing you can do to prevent a country that has a culture of crime and abusing their licensing issuing system and all that stuff. There's no amount of regulation and things that we can do to fix Mexico.
Right.
Or to fix the problems they had in Canada.
Exactly.
And so the real solution was the solutions that we offered. If they're violating the law, get them off the road.
Exactly.
Impound their trucks and pull them off the highways. And it's not, oh, slap them on the hand and let them keep operating.
Right.
And so,
I mean, because I spoke to a couple state troopers that told me that when they, have these drivers that can't read or speak English, that the process of trying to get anywhere with them takes hours, and then they end up just letting them go.
so you know what they do instead?
Mhm.
So then they start discriminately not enforcing the law on them
Exactly.
and enforcing the law more on the American truck drivers.
Right.
And that's what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
There would be a lot more incidents if the officers weren't regretting having to engage with a bunch of people they can't even talk to.
Right.
And so who are you going to pull over?
Right.
Like, nobody knows. You're an officer out here on the highway. Nobody's telling you which truck you have to stop, right?
Right.
So you're making these engagements and you're pulling them over. And are you going to pull over this guy or are you going to pull over that guy? This guy's going to take you 2 hours. You're going to get frustrated, and maybe it's the end of your shift and you don't want to deal with that. Or you can go get this guy that might just have a tail light out and you can hit him and you can go, and
Right.
everything just be fine. And so we believe there's a lot of that going on. Of course, you can't prove that out, but I know that we have met with tons of law enforcement officers, the officers,
Right.
not the politically engaged leadership,
Exactly.
but the officers are outraged and frustrated that our highways have been turned into this as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And so we support our highway officers.
That's right.
And we're happy that you guys are out there now, hopefully going to be allowed to enforce
Well,
the
they
law.
feel their hands are tied.
That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
and the minute that they would, or if they were to come out in support of what we were doing with 1569 or speak out, do you think that would have been accepted by their leadership?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
I've actually run into these highway officers in restaurants and everything else like that, and they're very supportive of what we're doing. They just can't publicly say that.
Right.
And so it's always a good feeling for me when I get to run into one of them just out and I get to talk to them on the side, and their bosses don't know.
Right. Exactly.
And so your officers support us, by the way.
That's right.
And so so their bill gets filed. We get everybody rallied up. We get to committee, and we're in committee, and we testify. And so these ladies are testifying about losing a husband, losing their dads.
Yep.
We had a tow company testify about 80% of his wrecks being impacted by this stuff. And we had business owners testifying about how they're being economically damaged. But this is what I've learned about our system that really needs a rapid. It's very important that we get to it quickly. That our representatives and our senators learn that they need to listen to the constituents and not the special interest groups.
Yes.
And the problem is, like, this situation is so complicated and so complex, and I understand that representatives and so they have to trust someone.
Mm-hmm.
And the Arkansas Trucking Association has been up there for so long. They were able to mislead our representatives and senators on this issue this time and make it like, oh, this is just about fraudulent CDLs. Oh, this is all we can do. We're doing everything we can do. And what they weren't telling them is we have there's members in the Arkansas Trucking Association who are economically benefiting from the use of these drivers. And so that's the real story.
Exactly.
Is who's making the money off of it. And so who's lobbying the Arkansas Trucking Association? And that's what you all should be asking.
Yes.
Who in the Arkansas Trucking Association is using these drivers? And why was it important for the Arkansas Trucking Association to shut down the conversation on B1 truck drivers? Mm-hmm. Why was it important for the Arkansas Trucking Association to shut down the conversation on non-domicile drivers?
Right.
And why was it important for them to shut down 1569?
Right.
And so they unanimously passed out of committee that day after all that. So the only person that spoke for the bill was from the Arkansas Trucking Association.
Yes. You had all these people that spoke against it.
Yeah.
And then you had someone from the Trucking Association that spoke for it.
Yeah.
And it unanimously passes.
Four.
And your bill
still never gets heard.
Yeah.
Still never gets heard. And so so the congressman that obviously that presented the bill spoke, and then this representative from the trucking association spoke. And so it unanimously passes, and it's just like, oh my goodness, like, what is that? That's just more God, because he has a better plan.
That's right. That's right.
And so we all celebrated afterwards. I would say too, like that committee hearing, another example of the games and the shenanigans was they quickly limited us to 3 minutes per speaker, and was quick to shut us off as we were trying to talk. So you would see these ladies talking about their husbands and the widows. We're done.
Right.
We're done. You hear these guys
And
talking
you're
about their
talking about
businesses.
losing your dad, losing your husband, and the emotion that comes
Yeah.
from that. It's really hard to get to the meat
Yeah.
in 3 minutes.
And then the same thing, you got these business leaders, they're being economic, they're bleeding out. You're done.
Right.
You're done. And so at the end of the day, they really didn't want this message getting out.
Yes.
They really were trying to silence the message, and you failed.
Right.
And so,
Failed greatly because it really has opened up the door.
It's amplifying.
Yeah, it is. It's opened up the door.
What's that? It's called the Barbara Streisand effect. The more you try to silence, like she was trying to hide. I don't know if are you familiar with that? She was trying to hide the location of her house, or and everybody found out she was trying to do that. So they all found
her.
So it's like, okay. And so I believe that's what's going to happen in this situation. And so anyway, 1745 gets out, and again, 1569 is not getting scheduled. Like, what is that? I don't know, because I'm not very involved with it. We're trying to investigate now. Like, how does that even happen?
Right.
That we never even get a committee hearing.
Yes.
But 1745 goes straight to the House floor. We take everything's moving so fast for them.
Yes.
Like we don't even have time to like organize a bunch of truckers, and it's like 2 days later we're on the floor.
Right.
And so we grab who we can, and we go up to the Capitol. We kind of protest. We had signs, standing on the steps, like, please. We have this big sign that showed the differences between 1569. 1569 requires English proficiency. 1569 bans B1 visitor visas for work. 1569 gets these non-domiciled, non-citizen truck drivers off our road. I got all these issues. 1745, does it do English proficiency? No. Does it do visitor visa abuse? No. Does it do non-domicile CDL? No.
Right.
I had this long list. You probably saw it.
Yeah. You've got a video of that on the social media page. Yeah.
And it's like, I was trying to make it as simple as possible.
Right.
So, like, even if they're lying to you,
kindergarten kid understands it.
Even if they're lying to you, you can see very clearly here that these are two very different issues.
Right.
Two different bills. 1569 has criminal statutes that would have held the guy who killed Mark Bryant accountable.
Yes.
Instead of getting negligent homicide or whatever, misdemeanor charge, whatever it was, and only being in jail for days, we wanted manslaughter. I believe it was felony. 10 years time.
Right.
So it had all that in there, and then 1745 literally had 3 things, and that was the fraudulent CDL, a felony for that, and then a felony if you didn't have this EAD card. Representatives, the EAD card. The guys coming from Mexico that are operating on visitor visas, which is the majority of the traffic coming from Mexico, which is supposed to be the issue that they're addressing, that they were even addressing with 1745, they don't have EAD cards.
Right.
They have this B1 visa. And so what's going to be interesting is how these officers apply this law. And we're going to show you everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to do anything. And so the majority of the population aren't even impacted by what they're trying to do. It's a very small percentage of the population. And I think I'm getting a better understanding of where their head was the more I research this non-domicile, and the more that comes to light on this non-domicile issue. Right. It's really revealing what they were up to. And so anyway, I forget where I was at on the 1745, but we're up there protesting, and we've got it all clearly laid out on the chart. And then the vote again, it's just like, we had one vote for us and everything else was just like for them. And the one vote was our representative.
Right. Right. He was who was trying to present your bill.
Yeah. And it's just like, wow, man, this is amazing. And so, so we leave there and it's just like, it's at the time, I mean, we're all still, we're defeated in the moment. We're like, man, this is rough. We really thought we could stop this. But God had a better plan, and I'm thankful for that because it's so much better than
Well,
what we were trying to do.
it's really made national news, and you've been on several national platforms talking about it.
And so even that defeat that day on the House floor just fed up more social media.
Yeah.
So we were doing that in March, I think was that House floor vote, probably somewhere around there. And like our views on social media at the time, in February, I think we were probably getting 2 million views a month. And then by March, we were at 4 million views for that month. And now for the month of April, we were over 6 million views on social media content. And so it's just like every time, they try to knock us down or whatever, it just kind of gets amplified. Mm-hmm. And so we're grateful for that because the message is a much bigger message. And so then we had the Judiciary Committee hearing because it went to the Senate side and got moved to Judiciary. And that's where now all of a sudden they care about English proficiency.
Yeah.
They filed an amendment and added English proficiency to 1745. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about that is if you read the news like here lately, it's like, oh, we did English proficiency.
Yeah.
That's not what 1745 was.
Right.
They brought that in at the 11th hour. And I really believe that was because of the message that was getting out about the English proficiency message was just really starting to getting loud.
Right.
And they were probably getting a lot of pressure from the representatives and senators. Hey,
Exactly.
Yeah, we need we should require English, So they added that to their bill and they took out the non-domicile CDL.
Mm-hmm.
They took out the non-domicile learner's permit. So there was 3 great victories.
Right.
Through all of that. And that was the fact that we stopped them from getting their non-domicile CDL in the state of Arkansas.
Yes.
We stopped them from getting their non-domicile learner's permit in the state of Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got them to add English proficiency. On the English proficiency, we were disappointed, not disappointed now, but we were disappointed at the time because they still refused to put the truck out of service.
Yeah.
They set a $500 fine if you can't speak English. So their plan in 1745, in the 11th hour, okay, we're going to add in English proficiency, but we're not really serious about it. We're just trying to, probably pacify some representatives here.
We're trying to quiet the cry.
Yeah, we're trying to cry. So we're gonna put some language in there so we can tout that we did English proficiency, but it's not going to do anything.
Yeah. Where's the teeth?
Yeah, we're going to pull a guy over. The officer is going to know that the guy can't speak or read highway signs, and he's going to let him go and proceed on his way.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? That's not doing anything.
Right.
And so, they did that. We continue to speak against, hey, this isn't and so we really start, highlighting, you got to take them out of service. And so we continue to speak against them. And we're speaking against them from the perspective, hey, we need 1569. I don't, representatives and senators, I don't want y'all thinking that this fixes it. We need 1569. And in that, here's what's very interesting. In that testimony,
mm-hmm.
Everybody go back, you can go back and look at this.
Yes.
The president of the Arkansas Trucking Association says, it's my understanding their bill has been withdrawn this morning. Okay. And me and Harvey are like, what? Mm-hmm. Nobody's withdrawn anything.
Right.
And so, no, there had been nothing withdrawn at that time. The bill then disappeared from the agenda. And so, I would let, I don't want to step on any toes with my representative. So, he can tell his story about all that, but everybody should just pay attention. What was that?
Right.
That was news to Shannon and Harvey. And And so how is that possible?
Exactly.
And so,
Because you had not withdrawn.
right.
Yeah.
It's not my position to.
Right.
I'm not the representative.
And Wayne Long had not withdrawn.
Right.
Yeah.
And so.
And you had not asked Wayne Long to withdraw.
Absolutely not. I'd actually, he'd been pressured to, and I'd said, let's have our committee hearing, let's have our testimony, and let's let them vote it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Make them vote it down.
Yeah. Make them speak.
I want them to go on record voting it down.
Exactly.
And we didn't get to have that. So what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, they pass it out of committee. It goes to Senate, and again, it just I would say that I don't know what the final vote was over there. They had to go to the House again and all the votes and stuff, but it just they got 1745 through. And at the time, it was a little discouraging, but again, you don't know what God's doing.
Right.
And so that's why the word's so important in what he teaches us. And that's, in Matthew 6:33, when he talks about seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. It's okay. In that passage in Matthew 6, he's talking about, do the birds worry? Before that, it's preceding. They don't worry about. So why worry? Don't worry when you get defeated. Don't worry when you get up and you speak about a resolution and your legislators aren't wanting to back you. Don't get up. Don't worry when you go into a committee and everybody votes against you. Don't worry when you go into committee and you talk to your own personal representative who knows your issues and he still votes against you. That was upsetting.
Yeah.
And don't worry when your own senator is a co-sponsor on the bill.
Yeah.
Against you. So all this stuff was just really lined up against us, and I'm thankful for that. And because
sometimes it opens up more doors because it even sparks more of a passion, and God, opens other doors and gives us more things to work on. And so you take that, and I know that, recently President Trump signed an executive order. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, as all of this is going on in the state of Arkansas, the social media is going wild and it's really taken off. And also, we're being asked to appear on a lot of different shows, radio shows, talk shows, the Steve Bannon show or the War Room. We're also having talks with, there's also talks going on in the background with some very high level people, one of them being from the administration. And so we're having talks. There was some conversation with some people in some federal agencies, all the stuff's going on behind the scenes. And so we knew that the White House knew and that we had been told that they're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Weeks prior to that, at least probably a month prior to that. I know I got specific word when we were at the Mid-American Truck Show in Kentucky. Hey, this is being worked on from the White House down. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so we were confident that it had landed in the right places and it was being worked on. We just didn't know how. So on April 11th, we sent a letter to the Secretary of Transportation, Trump's new cabinet member, Sean Duffy.
Yes.
And we outlined specific things, and we said, hey, welcome. We've got a crisis right now in the trucking industry, and it's really related to immigration. And could you please focus on these 5 things? And those 5 things were pretty much exactly what 1569 had in it.
Yeah.
And it was English proficiency. It was the non-domiciled CDLs. It's addressing the foreign CDLs, and it's addressing criminal statutes. And then it's calling for a task force to go evaluate the economic damage. And if you read the executive order, it says English proficiency. It doesn't say English proficiency and a fine.
Right.
It says take them off the road.
Yes.
It's out of service violation, which was 1569.
Yes.
And then it says that they're going to investigate the issuance of these non-domiciled CDLs by all the DMVs.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says they're going to investigate and validate all these foreign CDLs. And then it says they're going to go review the economic conditions of American truck driver. And so it's all been really, really exciting, and we're just so thankful. But I think the most important thing here is that along that way, along this whole path, we were praying in committee.
Mm-hmm.
There was a group of men praying in Bible study. Randy Sams being one of them.
Yep.
Who got me to come to committee. So we were praying in committee. There were the families of the accidents. They were praying for God to move in this. The business leaders have been praying that have been economically damaged, have all been praying. We've now got a group of over 3,000 truck drivers. We've got a group of over 3,000 trucks now this is separate. We've got carriers and we've got drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Our carrier membership now makes up over 3,000 trucks. All those business leaders are praying, and just so many people that are watching and involved through social media, have been praying, and so we really got to see a mighty move of God. We got to see a miracle,
Right.
as just faithful people were in prayer, asking for the Lord to move, and just trusting that even though, the odds were against us and people were saying that it couldn't be done and were voting against us, that God gets the final say.
That's right. That's right. And when you're looking at where you feel defeated or you think that there's a defeat, God's promises of hearing our cry and hearing our prayer, and has brought all these people together to pray for this.
Yeah, one of the things Harvey likes to talk about all the time is he was so moved that first time that we testified in committee, because he hadn't got yet to meet all these people, and we called them in, and everybody just kind of swarmed in to testify, and he was like, look how God has brought all these strangers together.
Yeah.
And now we all have this relationship and we're all friends.
Yeah.
And he's using that to love on for each one to love on one another. And it's just, and same's going on with the business owners.
Right.
Like, we're lifelong friends now.
Right.
And it's more than just a trucking association.
And isn't that the core of putting America first?
Yeah. Yeah. And putting Christ first.
Yeah. You put Christ first.
You can't, I think that's the message too. America first can only come after Christ is first.
That's right. Amen. Amen to that. Wow, what an eye-opening conversation today with Shannon Everett of American Truckers United. As we've heard, our nation's truckers are at the backbone of the America's economy, and yet they're being undermined by government overreach, open border policies, and unsafe practices that put every driver on the road at risk. The fight to protect American jobs, enforce safety standards, and restore dignity to this critical industry is far from over, but voices like Shannon's are leading the charge. If you care about safety, sovereignty, and supporting the hardworking men and women who keep this country moving, now is the time to stand up. Let your voices be heard. Sign up at AmericanTruckers.com. You do not have to be a trucker to sign up on AmericanTruckers.com to be engaged, right, Shannon?
That's right. And registration's free.
Demand accountability and keep pushing for policies that put America first on the roads, in our workforce, and in every corner of this nation. Thanks for tuning in to Arkansas First Reports. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode, and stay connected with us. If you enjoy this content, consider supporting us at arkansasfirst.com, and that's arkansas1st.com. We'll be back soon with more truth, more action, and more ways for you to make a difference. Until next time, I'm Kandi Cox. Keep fighting, keep praying, and keep putting Arkansas first.